What is up, everybody? How's it going? Just let me know if the audio isn't fine or anything of that sort so that I can fix it before we start. All right, okay. Looks like the audio is okay. No problem so far. Dev Kamal Saxena. Dart streaming, factory, asynchronous future, functional programming in Dart, what is listen method, why using values, what is JSON serialization. I'm going to be answering all of that. We can get started in a minute's time as soon as we have some people on the stream. All right. Let me give Alright, so the topic for today's session is we're going to be continuing from where we left off in yesterday's class or yesterday's session. We're going to be understanding what exactly and how exactly is Dart going to handle control statements. And even though it's completely for beginners and people who are just starting with Dart as the first programming language, they can definitely watch this because it's going to be extremely useful. You can still look into this because there's a bunch of different things that are possible in Dart, which I'm going to be covering as part of this session. So this is not just for the basics, those who want to learn the basics of programming, nothing of that sort. You can still understand how Dart handles a lot of different things in the background. So we're going to be specifically looking into what is called as control statements. Control statements are basically the mechanisms where you can handle uh, the flow of the program. Say the program starts from the top, it goes to the bottom, and you need to specifically handle the flow. You can just say stop here, start there, and things like that. You should specifically say what is it that you want the application or the program to do. And there's a bunch of use case to this because we're going to be like looking back into what Flutter is also doing, and we're going to be covering that as well in the session. So let's get started. All right, so this should be fine. So what we're going to be doing is to specifically look into control flow statements. So in this class, we're going to be having an hands-on into understanding the basics of programming, programming as such, like programming with this specific language in Dart. But also, we're also going to be looking into the programming basics as well, like what is a control flow statement, what does it do, what is a looping statement, what does it do, and what are operators, and all of those sorts are going to be covered. And you're also going to be having like going to be writing code. All of this is going to be on the web. Nothing is going to be, you don't need to have anything downloaded or anything of that sort. So I'll just give you a link. You can just go there and start writing your code and start practicing there. We're also going to be looking into some basics that we covered in the previous class, which is yesterday. So in case you guys have missed it, you can definitely you can just start from there on. Alright, so let's get moving on. What we're going to be doing is to specifically understand in the previous session, we learned about the basics of variables. How do you create a variable? Variables are not something that you just write and move along, right? What exactly do variables do? Variables in particular are basically act as a storage mechanism, storage of data. These could be a bunch of things starting from string data like a name or things like that, or you can even handle integer information like say age of me, age of a person, and things like that. So integer information can also be stored, and this also could be a floating point, a decimal point value, which will go inside something called as a double. Now double is considered as the floating point keyword. So these are the things that we saw in yesterday's video, and we also learned about how do you create variable names and what are the specifics to creating variable names. Variable names can be created in a bunch of different ways, and one important thing with Dart is that Alright, so in case you guys missed it, what I was telling was that Dart kind of like borrows things from bunch of different programming languages, especially Java, Python, and JavaScript. There's also a few syntaxes that's going to be similar present from C++ as well. So why does Dart do that? The primary intention for Dart when it was created probably in 2005 to 2009, this was the time when this language was getting built by Google. Was the primary intention was to replace or act as the entry point for web technology, right? If you want to build something on the web, they wanted Dart to be the language for web, but it kind of got overtaken by JavaScript. A lot of people started using JavaScript, and there was no way that it could keep up. So they kind of scrapped the project, and they actually have brought it up again, primarily because of the popularization of Flutter. Flutter is actually a UI toolkit that is actually used for building mobile applications. Now, mobile applications can be built in much more. Is my voice very low? How low is my voice? In the range of 1 to 10. Looks like all of the metrics are cool. If you want, I can raise my voice and talk, but still, just let me know from 1 to 10 how low is my voice. There's a problem with the audio speaker, audio input, but I'll get it fixed. In the meantime, yeah, I understand that voice low. Is it too low? If it's too low, then I can fix it. If it's okay now, I can continue on. Hopefully this is okay now, so I'll just continue. Yeah, so where did I leave? Okay, my pen is here. So what we've been looking into as specifically with no voice. Oh my god. But this shows that voice is fine, right? It's pumping the voice up. Okay, let me quickly check if the voice is fine. I'll mute things here. I quickly checked and looks like the voice is fine. I can hear. I think something must be odd with you. So just get it checked, because I just now checked, the voice looks fine. I have a phone on my right. I checked it. It looks fine. So I'm going to get continuing on. So what we did learn, or what we did see yesterday, was to specifically understand Flutter, understand the basics of Dart, and what is the behind the hoods, like what is the compilation that it does. Basically, it does something like something called as just-in-time compilation. Just-in-time compilation is, as you write your code, it kind of does the compilation in the background. Dave Kamal, I think the voice is fine. I just now checked. I can hear the output from here. Looks like my voice is okay. I can still hear the sound in my feedback. Can you check if something's wrong with your system or your phone? Because I can very well hear my voice. I just checked now. It looks fine. All right, so we started understanding about just-in-time compilation. So just-in-time compilation is primarily to understand, or how the compiler behind the hood, like Dart, uses just-in-time compilation to compile everything that you write as you write. Let's say you are initializing a variable. The compiler is understanding that you're initializing a variable. Followed by that, it is trying to understand what the variable does, what the variable means, and everything is being done as you write the code. So this means that it's actually giving a much faster compiler, makes it super easy to write any kind of program. Right, so this is the main reason why Flutter picked up, started using Dart as the language behind it. The one important reason that is also available with Flutter as well as Dart is the ahead of time compilation. So the ahead of time compilation is to basically store whatever the code that you're writing, like multiple times. If you write some code, it is not going to compile it every single time. So let's take a simple example of Python, right? If you take Python, only after you finish writing your code, you save it up, and then you write Python space the file name .py, and then you do the run there. It compiles the code and then it executes it. In Java, there is something called as you first compile the code using Java C, and then after the compilation is done, you pick the Java C file up and then run it with Java. So these are the two different mechanisms where the popular languages like Java and Python are working. However, with Dart, there is nothing like compilation that is going to be happening. Everything that you're doing is getting compiled as you write the code, and as soon as you just try to run the program, it's giving you the output almost instantly. So that's the behind the hoods part of Dart, and that's what we looked also into yesterday's in yesterday's session. This is the first half of the session that we looked into yesterday. Followed by that, we also understood the very basic thing called as the main function, like what is the use of a main function and why a main function is very important in order to enter into the program, right? This is actually borrowed again from Java. Java has these very famous method called as void main, right? You create a main function and only then you enter into the code. And this is the void main that is also being used by the Dart as well. And the syntax, like I said, is very similar to Java and Python. Most places you'll find like you just think like, am I writing it in Dart or am I writing it in Java? So most of these things are going to be like that. Only one more important thing that I also would make sure to point out is that without the main function, the Dart does not understand if there is any code at all to be run. So it's very important that you always create a main function, and the main function is going to be giving you the entry point into the entire thing. So main functions, again, if you guys have seen the Flutter videos, you'll find we start with the main function only. Without main function, the mobile application is not even going to run. So this is going to be the interesting things that we saw in yesterday's video. Followed by this, I talked a little bit about the functions, what is a function and how you create functions in Dart. Creating functions are pretty simple in Dart as well. They have two things. One is called as the return type, return for returning some data, and another thing called as arguments, where they take arguments from you. So one example that I gave in yesterday's session was, let's say you're trying to build a house, right? And you have a house, you have a door inside. Now this door is going to be the main function. This main function that you create here, that's going to be the door. As soon as you enter this house, you have, let's say that you have a kitchen here and you have like bunch of bedrooms and there's a restroom here and all of that sort is going to be there. So each of these things are going to be subcategorized as a function, and the main need of a function is to modularize a code. Now you can say that they make it look good on a paper, or they make the program look good, but behind the main reason why you would create a function is to modularize the code. Modularization is one of the most important topics that you should definitely know when you're trying to build a very big program, because without modularization you will be just writing this blob of big huge code that just runs from top to bottom without any function. So one of the important things that you learn one of the important things that you also pick up as you write code and start programming is to modularize your code as much as possible. So these are the couple of things that we saw in yesterday's session. So we're just going to be continuing from there on, and I'm just going to be explaining as much as possible as we go forward. So any questions so far, or we can just move along from here. Dart streaming factory, I'll definitely talk about Dart streaming factories. I'll also give you like a bit of understanding of this at the end of the session. But yeah, just to give you like a bit of understanding, right? Just since you asked this question, so what exactly is a factory? Like, what does a factory do? Factory churns out things, right? You have a pencil factory, they make pencils there. You have a pen factory, they make pens there. Similarly, a factory in a programming language itself is primarily used for creating objects that is going to be easy for navigation or easy for understand. They just create the same type of an object, but for multiple consumers. So this is kind of an advanced topic which we cannot cover as part of this session, but just to give you a little bit understanding of what exactly does factory. Yeah, so when you talk about streams in Dart, right, not just in Dart, basically what does a stream do, right? Stream is carrying an information from one point to another without dropping it. Let's say that it's a stream of water or a stream of something, stream of a river, where start to end it's the same thing that is flowing, and you just have a basic understand, like you have an object that is going to be flowing, so data that's going to be flowing from one point to another without it dropping. So you have like a stream of information coming in. There is no like you send one and you just repeat back that after some time. It's like without any delay, some stream of data that is going to be coming in. So that's like the basics of stream. You're asking bunch of advanced questions which I would love to cover in a separate session, but for now it's like a basic session. So um, I'll probably try to give a brief understanding. So hash map, again, it's a data structure to just minimize the usage. It's a kind of an advanced data structure. You have basic data structures which includes the array, stack, linked list and stuff like that. Hash maps on the other hand, in the compiler itself, they have a very easier way of storing data. You just have a key, a value. The hash maps does is that they reduce the memory allocation when it comes to storing data, and they just have this easier way of storing data. That's the main use of hash map. There's a bunch of use cases around it which I'll definitely cover in another session. All right, so let's get moving on. I probably would have hopefully have given. Dev Kamal is asking a lot of questions which is should be coming under an advanced category. But again, this null safety is a good question which I'll try to cover here itself, because the recent changes from Dart is that they've made it completely null safe. Now, null safe is something that you have to know, but if you find it difficult to know, we will probably cover it in a separate session. Let me come here and remove this. So what exactly is null safety? And because yesterday's session we did learn about function returning null data. Now, null data is when there is no return data, right? You have like something, you create a function and you don't return any data back to the function that is being called from. So what null safety is that Dart is recently included the null safety feature. So Dart's null safety says that it is now able to understand when a function is returning a null or not, and you no longer need to check if a function is returning a null data. So let's say that your function, yesterday we saw functions like I don't really remember the name of the functions that I gave. So let's say there's a function here like this, and this is basically a void function, meaning that it's going to be returning a null data, right? This is not returning nothing. When you create a function like this and you want to call this in another place, like you want to call this function off, you just call it as function off and you do this, what happens is that most of the time you would specifically go and check if the function is returning some data or not. If this function is not returning any data, then you will say that this function is not returning any data, so I'm just going to carry on. This is how the basic functions, this is how the basic programming languages that you have seen so far, like Java, Python, JavaScript does handle it. But with Dart, they've just given the feature inbuilt, meaning that you don't have to worry about a function returning null or not. If a function returns null, it will automatically handle it in the background and it will not create a null pointer exception. No, that's something it's a famous exception with Java, right? So you will find that there is no concept of null pointer exception that is part of the Dart compiler itself. So pretty much that's what is going to be the null safety feature, wherein you don't necessarily have to go in and check if a function is returning null or not. So this is going to be the basic things that you will need to get started. So I'll just cover the next important topic, which is going to be control flow statements. That's the topic for this video. So I'll cover the control flow statements and try to answer Dev Kamal's question in about 5 minutes time. So just give me 5 minutes and I'll answer your question. So let's quickly understand what a control flow statement is. And if you take any programming language, probably there's one programming language called as Pascal. I'm not really sure. Pascal, right? One of this oldest programming language, the time of C, C++ things, right? Things like that. Okay, they ask, do you provide online Flutter training class like lesson? I do provide. It's available in this channel. There's also another channel that I'm running. There also I provide classes, free classes, right? You can just watch them live. So in this channel, I'm going to be coming up with Flutter from next week. I just wanted to cover Dart in this week. The next week, I'm going to be coming out with Flutter again. So we have already seen the basics of Flutter in the previous week. In the next week, I'm going to be continuing with where we left off and understanding about building Flutter applications. So once you cover the Dart, it's going to be very easy to understand how it works in Flutter. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So what we've seen with control flow statements, right, especially like older programming languages, you will always find that there is like bunch of different things happening. If you want to take a program, you always read it from top to bottom. That's what you do. If you take a book, you read it from top to bottom, you paper top to bottom. There is few languages that you read from right to left. Arabic, I think, is from when you read it from right to left. But most of the basic languages that you speak, like English, Tamil, Hindi, all of these things you read from left to right. So similarly, everything that you are reading should also be from top to bottom, and that's what programming languages also are trying to do. So take any programming language, Python, JavaScript, or Java. All the programs get executed from the top. Whatever you write in the top is the first thing to get executed, and it comes down, the compiler comes down, and by the end of it exits. So that's what Dart is also doing. But in this flow, right, let's say you want to create a bunch of things. So I'll just open another slide probably. So in this flow, when you're writing something from top to bottom, so you are writing like initializing the name, and you are saying this is going to be my age, and you are saying this is my date of birth, and all of these things are saying successfully. And here you're doing bunch of actions, like you're checking if the name is matching, your age is matching, your date of birth is matching, and finally you are printing something like data is the entire thing is successful, so you can just exit this program. So this is going to be the basic program that you are writing. This is basically like the most simplest thing that you can write. So when you are writing from top to bottom, let's say that at this point of time you want to like stop the program or pause the program, and you want to do some other action, like you want to go and check if the name is matching another name that you are writing, right? You're saying the name should match my name, which is Bharat, this example, and you want to check if the age is also matching. You want to just give it a pause and not just execute everything one by one. You want to control the flow of the program. That's basically where the control statements come into picture. The most basic control statements that you can see are three important ones, which is going to be in this slide. Yeah, the most important, the major ones are if, else, and else if. So I'll explain about this with an example as well. So what this does is that it gives you the option of controlling the flow of the program. Necessarily what you will do is you just think of this as you will just ask yourself, right, if this is matching, then you continue. That is exactly what the programming language is also trying to do. For backend, what should you choose? Dart, which is Node.js, or is Java? So one thing that I I covered once about how Dart can be used as a server as well. You can create your own Dart server and try to do things there. But again, Dart was specifically created to act as a front-end language. Especially that you can see as part of the Flutter being the UI toolkit. You will find that a bunch of things not available with Dart in ready-made. There is no framework that uses or creates a server with Dart. I'm not really sure if it is there, but as far as I have used Dart as a backend, I do find that it is not a lot of things are available. However, with Node.js and Java, you find a lot of frameworks that are available. With Java, you have Spring Boot, Hibernate, and things like that. And Node.js itself is a single thread server framework. So all of these things are available with Node.js and Java. So it, all of these three things are still possible. You can still create a server with Dart and things. You can still do a lot of things with it. But I would recommend checking out Node.js or Java in case you want to do something or scale something ready-madely. There is nothing available at this point of time with Dart. Yeah, I'm going to covering if, else, and else if now. There is no switch cases as part of Dart, so that's one thing that you need to know. With respect to Dart, there is no concept of switch cases, right? Only if, else, and else if are only three control statements that are available. So let's go back to the Dart pad. The Dart pad is where we write code. You don't necessarily need to know. Yeah, so no. All right, so probably, yeah, cool. Yeah, everything looks fine. So I'm going to be writing some code on the dartpad.dev. Just go to dartpad/dev .pad.dev, hit enter in your browser, and you will find that it opens up this kind of a blue kind of a IDE where you can practice your code without having to download anything. You can still install the SDK and run things locally. There's a setup instruction. As soon as you click this, you can do that, but just write it on the online itself. You don't have to necessarily have a computer, even just practice writing it on a mobile itself. So that's the good thing about Dart, right? So to the commerce question, can we use can we make enterprise e-commerce app? Yeah, I could definitely do it, right? Flutter is a UI toolkit, basically just giving you the mechanism to create beautiful UI applications much faster. And you can definitely create an e-commerce application. You can check out, I have a very bare bones e-commerce app created with to explain about the Flutter's state management. So I just created one in my channel. Check it out on codermonk.com. So it's a codermonk YouTube channel, so you'll find it. So continuing on, we're going to be talking about the control flow statements in particular. Control flow statements are specifically created to handle the or to stop the flow or to move the flow of the program. So what we're going to do is to start with initializing few variables. So yesterday sessions we saw about initializing variables, so you can just say var space the variable name that you want to create. So I'll just create a variable name as name of student. This is going to be the variable name. And hi Priyanshu, how's it going? Thanks again for joining this stream today. I remember you from yesterday's stream. So the name of the student is going to be the variable name. Followed by that, I'm just going to give it a name, right? I'll just give it as Bharat and just go and put a semicolon, and there you go. Thank you. Thanks again for that. Thanks again for the comments, guys. Missing something, looks missing here. Okay, I think just tell me if the code is zoomed in. If it is not, I will try to zoom it in a bit more. Name of student. Okay, I think it's zoomed in a bit. Okay, looks zoomed in a bit. Anyway, let's move on. So the variable name that I've created here, I want to create a bunch of other variable names as well. So let's go and say age of student. Age of student is going to be an integer value. Great. Let's say that age of student, my age is 24, so I'll just say age of student is 24. Followed by that, I'm just going to be giving another variable now, DOB of student. So if you are from yesterday's session, you'll definitely know we created the same kind of same variables yesterday also. So DOB of student is for the date of birth, so I'll just say 01/01/1995 or something like that, and we have three variables created. So as I run this application, you'll find that you'll throw an error saying there is no main method found. We saw about this also yesterday. So let's go and start with a simple main method. So just say main of open brackets and close brackets followed by the open and close flower brackets. Hit enter and you can start writing anything you want inside these open and flower brackets. So when you say module, right, in a programming language, it basically means the function that you're creating. A module does a bunch of action, and you can put all of these actions into a simple function, and there you go, you have all these things that is going to be required for that method. So inside this main function, what I want to do is to try to cover up just to check some things here. So I can just say print I'll say this is the start of the program, and I'll say this is the end of the program, right? You can say all this and you can just run this program now, and you'll find that this is actually going to print it on the right. So it's just this start of the program and the end of the program, which is cool. I'm very happy with this. But let's say I want to do some checks here. I want to check if my age of the student is kind of like more than 24 or more than 25, something like that. That's what you want to do, right? There is no program that is just want to print some things. If you just want to print things, it's pretty much simple. This is the most simplest program. But if you want to really do some kind of an action, right, inside the method, you want to specifically do some activity inside this method. So what you will do in here is to have the first control flow statement. So what are the two control flow statements that you have seen? Three control flow statements. One is the if, else, and else if. So basically what if does is that if says if something happens, then you do some action. This is going to be the first one. If that does not happen, you just also need to have a following else block. So if that does not happen, you just create something else. So basically you are creating two streams, basically to say if something is happening, let's say the age is more than 24 or 23, then you print some data. And if the age is not 24, if it is either 27, 30, 100, 200, 300, some number that is not going to be within the range that you want, then you print some other data. So these are the two things that you want to do. This is kind of a binary flow, and you just want to do, if it is a true one, you do this, if it is a false one, you do this. And in order to do that, you have the if block, and if block you put right here, and you say if the age is greater than 23, then you print this, else you print this. So basically this is the two important things, these are the two important statements that you want. And this is just going to cover the binary flow, right? Binary means one or true, 0 or 1. So either it's happening or it is not happening. So these are the two things that is going to control. So in this one, what we're going to do is try to understand how the if and else block work. Just go here and type if, and you say if the age of the student is greater than 23, then you open and close bracket, open and close your flower brackets, and then you print age of student is greater than 23. So these are the things, this is the first statement that you want. Now you want to also print if the age of the student is not 23, let's say the age of the student is probably 27, and in this example we have it as it's not greater than 23. Let's say the age of student is about 20 or 21, and you still need to print something, right? So I'll just say print age of the student is lesser than 23. So basically what you're doing is creating this binary flow, which is going to be helpful for us to control the flow of the program. So let's run this again and see what happens on the right. Voila, so we got it. We have printed the start of the program is printing, and followed by that we're printing age of the student is greater than 23. That is also printing successfully. Finally, the end of the program is also getting printed, because that is what is happening here. So if you clearly see, this is not getting printed. That is primarily because the control is entering here, and after that it is exiting and coming out here. So that's how you control the flow of the program. You are trying to branch things out. Let's say you have huge river, it kind of branches things out. Every river that starts from an ocean is going to end in an ocean. If it starts from a mountain, it's going to end in an ocean. So it starts from at a point and ends at a point, right? So you're controlling the flow of the program by basically using control statements, which are going to act as like the separators. So that's why this comes into picture. So you have the if, else, and that's pretty much it. Right, so we are going to be continuing on from here to understand the next one, which is the next control flow statement, which is called as the if else if block. So else if block happens when you want to have more than one or more than two flows for your program. Like I said, here it's only a binary flow. You have either this way or this way. Let's say you are on a very huge subway. You want to go for this exit, or you want to go for this exit, or you want to go for this exit, and you want to have multiple exits for the subway, right? That way whoever wants, they can choose that and they can exit out of this interstate highway or something like that. So in order to do this kind of multiple exits for a program, multiple exits for a flow of a program, you use the else if block. Else if block, else if here, you just say else if, and you just had multiple else ifs everywhere. So I'm going to be writing the another else if here to see what I can make this flow of the program as. I'll just say else if the age of the student is equal to 23, meaning if the age of the student is just going to be a specific equal to. So if you see specifically here, if you say greater than something, the else will mean, so if you see this program here, if the age of the student is 23, you're just going to print something, and the opposite of an greater than is, alright, so the opposite of the if greater than symbol is actually the lesser than equal to symbol. So whatever is not within a part is going to be on outside. So we learn about the this one, right? You understand about how this works. You have some data here and you have some data here. Whatever is not in this will be in this part. So that's exactly what is happening here also. If you say something is greater than 23, the opposite of this means that it can be either less than 23 or equal to 23. So this is the if and else part that we try to do now. But what I want to do is specifically check if the age of the student is specifically 23. So what I'm doing is I'm splitting the program into greater than 23, equal to 23, and lesser than 23. So I'm controlling the flow that way. I'm just going to now say print age of student is exactly equal to 23. So this is what I'm trying to say right now. So as soon as I say this, what happens is that if you put the age as 23, the flow will enter right inside this part and not on the if block or the else block. It will only enter into this block. So let's run this code. We'll see for ourselves. There you go, you see that, right? So it's not entering the else block at all, it's just entering the else if block, because that is an exact match for what you're looking for. That's what this else if block does. So it says that age of student is exactly equal to 23. All right, so we've so far understood the major or the basic control flow statements, if, else if, and the else block. And we'll be moving on with the next one, which is called as the looping statements. Looping statements are very useful, and before that let me answer any questions that are out here. Alright, so Dev asks, native Android versus Flutter app, which performance is best? There is kind of like a performance metric tool that is available with inbuilt with the Flutter itself, or the inbuilt with Dart itself, which you can use, and I have made a video on that not so long ago. So you can find that the performance of Flutter, like what are the different metrics that they judge the performance with. And one thing that you need to know is that if you take a native language, let's say you want to build something for Android, and you're using either Android XML or you're using Kotlin, and you will often find that the performance wise you will have a very closer performance, not a very huge drastic change in performance. However, you will also find that few important metrics like size of the application, size of the APK, or size of the battery optimization that is available with native code, and things like that might be missing with the cross-platform toolkits. Not just with Flutter, you can even find the same with React Native as well. You can even find the same with Xamarin. All of these cross-platform application frameworks / toolkits do have that kind of an disadvantage, but at the same time you are having much faster application development lifecycle. So you're doing some things in much faster way compared to the native. Say you take 6 weeks to build a native application, you can do the same application, same UI in probably under 4 weeks, or probably under 3.5 weeks. So that's the trade that you're trying to do with the speed and the speed of development versus the application's performance. So most often you find that Flutter applications are being just used as the prototype applications. Somebody wants to just see if this application is good on the market. They quickly build this application using Flutter and just release it in the market, and they see how the interaction is and the application is success, and then they again go back to the roots and try to improve the performance of it by touching the native code and doing some additional optimizations on the native side. So that's the trade that they're trying to do, and most often you find it's actually successful. So there is not a big performance gap that is available, but still it is going to be slightly there for sure. Alright, so let's move on with the looping statements. So understanding looping statements are also very important. With the looping statements, particularly what you're trying to do is to do the same activity again and again. With the same activity again and again, I mean that let's say you stuck at some point and you want to like do the thing again, check again, you're trying to do some kind of a retry mechanism there. You want to retry the connection. So you want to retry something there. So you're trying to do the same activity one after another. You can either put the same activity in multiple else if blocks. If the age is 23, do it again, 23, do it again, and things like that. But you will find that it's actually taking so big of a space. You have a bunch of else if statements available. So in order to stop that, they came up with kind of a looping statements where the syntax is very similar to Java. You say for, and you say if the value is I is equal to 20 or something like that, and if you say I is less than 20, I is equal to 0, and I is less than 20, then you kind of increment it. So this is how the for statements work. So I'll show you guys an example of how this entire thing is actually going to work in program itself. So I'll just write a very simple looping statement here using the for as the keyword. So there's a bunch of keywords that you need to know, else if all of these are keywords and you cannot use it as a variable name, that also we covered in yesterday's session. So I'll try to now write the first looping statement. Right, so the looping statement for the first one is going to be the for block. So just say for, let's have an integer outside. Integer I is equal to 0, right? Integer I is equal to 0. If the I is less than 15, we just do I plus plus, something like this you can do. And yeah, if I is less than 15, quickly see how this works. So if I is less than 15, then you're trying to print you just try to print the I. All right, okay, this is back up again. So what I'm trying to do is to do or create the first looping statement, which is the for statement. So I'm just going to say for, and I'm just going to create a variable which is going to be the I. So I'll just say I is equal to 0, and followed by that I'm just going to say if the I is, until the I's value is 15, I'm just going to keep on incrementing the value. So I'll talk about what this I plus plus here exactly means. I'll talk about it in depth. Because in the next slide I have something called as an operator, like what is an operator in Dart. So for now let's think of it this way. So I'm just saying for, which means that if you see a for, it means it's going to be a looping statement. It's going to continuously do that action again and again. Whatever is inside this block, it's going to continuously do it again and again. So I'm just going to say for int I is equal to 0, meaning that I'm initializing my first variable, which is I is equal to 0. I'm saying until the I's value becomes 15, in the programming data structures sense, it means that from 0 to 14, not 0 to 15. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 times until this loop executes 15 times, keep incrementing it by 1, meaning that I becomes 0, after that becomes 1, after that becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and keeps on going. So just try to print the value of I, and you will see for yourself how this thing actually works. To string, or you can just print it as I itself, just still print, no problem. So go here and hit the enter, and to the right you will find that it's actually printing. It's starting from 0 till 14, it keeps printing the value. So technically what is happening in the background of this this looping statement is that it's executing whatever is inside this block, which is the marked by the open flower to close flower bracket, executing this thing 15 times. Basically that's what is happening. So this is the first looping statement that you need to know. Followed by this, there's also one more looping statement. Alright, hopefully this is back up again. Okay, let's continue on. Alright, so next one we're going to be looking into is the while looping statement, which basically has the same syntax of this again. So it will just take the block only, wherein you need to specify up to which point does this function or this looping statement has to run for. So here if you see, you're doing something called as the initialization before this block, which is actually marked by the semicolon. So this is part is called as initialization of the variable. And once you initialize the variable, you are telling up to what number should this loop should be run. And the next after the semicolon is the increment statement, where you're telling that you need to increment it by 1. So from 0 to 14 you keep on running this loop. So that's the syntax for the for statement. Followed by this, we have the while statement, wherein in the while we are trying to tell we're just going to be passing only the range of the loop only. So you have initialization happening outside the while block. So I'll just say int I is equal to 0, and I'll just say inside here just run it till it's actually 5. That's the only value that you're trying to pass inside this block here. So it will only take the range till it should run, and the increment statement happens inside the block. So I plus plus should happen here. So I'll talk about this, like I said, as it's called as a postfix operator, which is going to be talked about in the next slide. So for now, I'll just you will just see that there's two ways of creating a looping statement. So let's print this out again. For this now, I'm just going to say while block value is equal to I dot to string. All right, hit enter. Okay, this does not work. And we will see how this while block works. So go here and run this thing up again, and to the right you will see that it's going to be printing the while block separately. So two ways of creating two loop statements available. One is for creating everything on the go itself. This while block, on the other hand, is still doing the same activity, same action, but what additionally it is trying to do is that it is giving us the ability to create or initialize a variable outside the block or outside the looping block. So two different things, and this is going to be very useful when you're trying to build a program. So this also are going to be a part of the control flow, because you're trying to control the flow of the program. We are stopping it at some point, it's just executing it for a long time, and that's what is actually going to be used. There's a couple of things that you need to know when you're creating a looping statement. One important mistake that most people do often is they forget to give the increment operator. Now let's see if you forget to give the increment operator, you'll see that this actually means if you start from 0 and you're saying that I till the value of I is reaching 5, or in this data structures, or if you see computers, it will only count from 0 to 4, because when you said less than 5, it means that it's up to 4 only. So it's saying that until the value of I is equal to 4, you just keep on running, but you're not giving any kind of an increment to it, right? You're just not telling increment the value of I by 1 every single time the loop completes. So what will happen is that it's just technically creating something called as an infinite loop, where it will get stuck in that infinite loop and it will not exit the program at all. So this is often a big mistake. Sometimes you just do this careless mistake and you find that your program is hanging forever, and you'll just see how it happens. You just run this program and you will find that it just gets stuck right there. It will not, nothing will come on the right. It will just get stuck. So this is often a mistake, and you will find that the entire browser itself has gotten stuck. So don't do that mistake. So I'll just have open another dartpad now. Def. Alright, so I've opened another dartpad again, and just continue to write our program from the next one. So the next slide, you're going to be learning or understanding about different operators that are available, what these operators do, and all of these things we're going to be seeing right now. Name of the student, right? Student. It's Bharat. What is it? We had age of student 24, where we had DOB of student. This is going to be 01/01/1999, that some number. So these are the things that we had, and do not forget the main block. So as you keep writing dart code again and again, you'll know all of these things will come automatically. Alright, so main block, we have looked into two print statements you put initially. Just said this is the start of the program, right? Followed by that, we had this is the end of the program. Alright, so two things we put, and if you execute this, only these two statements will get printed on the console. So we have so far seen about looping statements, if block, else if block, and all the control statements that are associated with it. In the next slide, we're going to be looking into something called as the uh, first the operators. I'll talk about functions, shorthands after that. So first the operators. So the operators, if you say, let's take example of a calculator. If you take a calculator, you find that there are a bunch of things that a calculator can do. You can either add values, you can do something like subtract values, and these are called as operations of arithmetic operations, right? Most often you find that in a calculator itself. The same operators are also available with Dart, so you don't have to worry about it. So you'll find that in Dart there's a bunch of operators starting with the arithmetic operator. So the usual arithmetic operators includes the addition operators. You have the subtraction operator, which is plus here, minus, and multiplication is the multiplication symbol, and division is the slash, and modulo is the modulo operator. So these are the most basic operators, the same as your calculator. So that's what you're doing in a calculator. All those things are applicable here as well. So you will do an arithmetic operation on integers, or you will do it on a floating point value or a decimal value. So same way you can do the same as well in Dart also. Followed by that, there's the next one which is very important, which is called as the postfix and the prefix operators. So I'll talk about this right now with an example as well. So when you take the example of a postfix operator, you will see that you have variable. Let's say the variable is called as I, and the variable I is assigned to a value of 1, and this is the value that you have assigned it. When you say postfix, you are definitely saying you can actually give an operator following the variable name. So this is the variable name I have here. So I can just say I, and there's only two postfix operators that are possible. One is plus plus or minus minus. So I can either say increment the value by 1, which is obviously the need for plus plus. When you say plus plus, it just means by 1. There is another postfix operator that you can also do, which is the minus minus. So you can just say I minus minus. So what happens is that it instantly does a postfix operation on that. It will just say the value is going to be I plus plus, so it will make the value as 2 in this example, and if you take the value of I as 1, it will make the value of as 0. So this is going to be the most important one. So if you see in a looping statement, you will find all these postfix operators available instantly. By default, you need to know what a postfix operators are. You can, on the other hand, also do something called as a prefix operator. Prefix operator work the same way. They also do the increment and decrement, but there's a very small catch in that. So let's say I is equal to 1. And what the prefix operators does is that it just add the operator before the variable name. So I'll just say plus plus I, or I can say minus minus I. In theory, both of these are trying to increment and decrement the value. So it will still be 2 and this will still be 0. And what the difference exactly between the postfix and prefix operators are is the value that is going to be getting assigned before or after. So let's say that you have another variable, probably variable as data. This is going to be the variable, and what we're trying to say here is I'm just telling the value as plus plus I. So if you read it from left to right, you are saying the variable is there's a variable present, the variable name is data, and after, as soon as the equal to sign, you're seeing the plus plus first. So what will happen is that the compiler will first increment the value of I by 1, and it will give the value as 2, and it will assign it to the data. However, if you go here and you do the same operation as where data is equal to minus I plus plus, it will not initially increment the value of data. The data's value, if you read from left to right again, it's variable. Okay, so like I said, the value you start reading from left to right. So you have the variable created, the variable's name is data, and as soon as the equal to sign, right just after the equal to sign, it will be initializing the value as 2. It will be initializing the value as 1 only. So the data's value will be 1, but the I plus plus will get executed in the background, and I's value will get initialized incremented to 2. So if you see in a program, I'll write it as a program as well, you'll find that it is actually getting incremented post assignment, and on the prefix operator it is getting incremented first, and only then it is actually going to assign the value. So these are the two different operators that you can use in a program, and you will find the use case of that as I write the code. So I'll just quickly move on to the another important operator called as conditional operators. Conditional operators are just a shorthand for the if else block that we saw. You can just create something like if the value of I is greater than 23, do this, else do this. That's the use of basically the if else block, right? What happens with conditional statements is that you're just creating a shorthand for that. The shorthand is the question mark symbol and the colon symbol. So if you have the value as I greater than 23, you can say assign the value as 24, or you just assign the value as 0. So you're technically saying if the value is greater than 23, you give the value as 24. If it is not, then give the value as 0. So basically this is useful for assigning some data. So this also I will write it in an example. Alright, so these are basically 3 important operators that you need to know. I also cover the assignment operator when I'm writing the code. Alright, let's go to the code. .pad.dev here. Functional programming. So what we are doing is the functional programming, and there's also the functional notation, the functional shorthand. That is what is coming under the functional programming. So you'll see about that. So let's write here. We're going to be writing the first operator. Like I said, all the basic operators still apply. So if you say var print age of student plus 10, it will increment the value by 10. And if you just say age of student minus 20, it will decrement or subtract 20 from that. And this is going to be the basics of arithmetic operator. The next one I talked about was the postfix and the prefix operator, right? Postfix and prefix. So let's see the example of a postfix and prefix operator. I'm going to be initializing a value as I is equal to 0. And what I'm going to do now is to try to print the postfix value. So I just first print I plus plus, right? So this is going to be the postfix value that I'm trying to print. If you guys did learn it from here, you will know that read it from left to right again. The print statement is there, followed by that there is an I which is going to get printed. So the value that is going to get printed is going to be 0 only. Now, and in the next line, I'm going to now print the value of I alone. I'm just printing the value of I alone, and you will find that the value will now have gotten incremented to 1. So let's run this code, and to the right you'll see all this example being present. Well, it's great. We have the first one, which is age plus 10, which is 34 getting printed, and there is age minus 20, there's getting 4 getting printed, and then comes the postfix operator. So postfix operator technically is incrementing the value by 1, which is what is the use of this plus plus here. But you find that the value is still 0 getting printed. However, if you remove this plus plus from here and you just print plus plus 1 or I, you will find again left to right reading. So print plus plus I. So it will first increment the value of I and only then it print it. So just go here, run this code again. You find that the value of I has gotten incremented to 1 and it has gotten printed, and the next I is still remaining there itself. So this is going to be the use of a postfix operator, and it's a very useful operator. There's a bunch of technical questions around this. So you'll find this question being, this can also be very tricky when you're writing a huge program, and there's also this bunch of problem solving questions around this as well present. So just try to understand or master this, and you'll be like solving a huge number of problems when it comes to problem solving with the programming language. Alright, so this is going to be the end of the postfix and prefix. Followed by that, I have one more thing called the conditional operator, right? The conditional operator is going to be something similar to this. So conditional operator is going to be just the same. Like I said, it's going to be having something called as a question mark. Followed by that, you have a bunch of actions here and a colon right here. So there's going to be another bunch of actions right here. So this is going to be the use, or this is how you're going to write a conditional operator. So what I'm going to do now is to try to print this now. So I'm just going to say if age of student is greater than 23, I'm just going to say question mark means that if the age of student is greater than 23, then execute this part. I'm just going to execute or just print the value or print the statement age of student is greater than 23. If not, or in else block, I'm just going to print age of student is not greater than 23, and I finish it with a semicolon, and you find the print statement is completed. So you just go here, and this is how you just basically creating a shorthand for the if else block, and just go up and you print it, and to the right you will find that the age of student is greater than 23 getting printed, primarily because the value is 24. So that's pretty much it. So this is the shorthand for the conditional statements, and it's also very useful when you're trying to write a good or big program. You don't have to necessarily always have if else block. That's the next one that I talked about was the assignment operator. Now, assignment operator is a very new one that is available with respect to the Dart programming language. Dart has a new operator called as the assignment operator, and this actually ties back to the question that Dave asked at the initial start of the stream on something called as a null safety. Null safety is when you're trying to understand if a data does not throw a null pointer exception, meaning that it's not empty and you're trying to operate on it. So what this assignment operator does in particular is to assess the data, assess the variable, check if the value is null or not. If it is not null, then you assign the value back. If it is null, then you don't do it. So just you will see the example here. So the operator symbol is going to be like this. The variable that you're trying to assess, let's say the variable called as I, and you want to check if the I is null or not. So you just say question mark. If the i's value is null, then you assign a value, some other value to this. So if i's value is null, you assign the value as 23. If the i's value is not null, you don't assign anything. You don't assign this value to this. So you'll see this in action right in this one. So what I'm trying to do is now check if the value of I is null or not. So I'll just create another variable here. I'll just call it as int. I'll just call it as a variable data is equal to null. So I'm specifically assigning it to null. So I'm just saying the data is going to be null. So what I want to do is, if I want to check if the data, if it is null, if the data is null, then I want to assign the value to it called as this is a non-null data now. So this is a string that I'm trying to assign to the value or the variable data. So we'll just print before and after this, right? We'll add a print statement right here. And another print statement of this should be data. So we'll see what the value of data is before and after this statement that we have executed. So we'll go here and run this. And to the right, you will see that, you'll see that the value of null is getting printed when it comes to the data itself. So this statement is getting printed successfully. But after the execution of this statement, which is basically the assignment operator, we just have the value as this is not a non-null data now. So in case you want to check again, let's, instead of giving it as a null, we'll just give some data like this is not null now. So basically it's throwing an error saying that the left operand can be null, so the right operand is never executed. So basically it's saying the compile. Right, okay, looks like fine now. So you will run this again, you will see how it works. I mean, it's throwing like a warning saying that the left operand can't be null. So we'll just go here and we'll run this. And you find that this is not null now, this is not null now getting printed, meaning that this statement is not getting executed at all because this data was never null. So this is a new operator that's available as part of Dart and is a very, very useful operator. And there's one more operator called as logical operators as well, which is a very simple way of doing something with respect to the logical and the logical or and things like that. So which is not necessarily needed as part of our basics session. So you'll probably be seeing it when you're trying to cover the advanced sessions that are going to come up. So that's pretty much it for this session that I've planned. There's one more shorthand notation for functions. That's what they was also asking us, like what is the functional programming when it comes to Dart, right? So you have the function shorthand, which is very useful. It's pretty much taken from the JS syntax. The JavaScript has this very frequent. You find this very frequently being used, and Flutter also uses it. I mean, if you're following me from Flutter, you will see that it's actually very useful there. So what exactly does the shorthand does? So the shorthand does is that it's instead of giving it a function name, we're just starting from the open brackets and close brackets only. So the open brackets and close brackets, instead of a function name, you're not giving that. You're just giving the open brackets and close brackets. Here we can pass an argument that you want. In this example, it's the name that's the argument. And instead of opening and closing like a flower bracket, we're just using the equal to greater than symbol, which is like pointing an arrow. And this pointing an arrow does is that it just execute whatever is there as a single line. Only you can have one line here. So we're just basically saying here is if the argument is present, like it enters the function, and the function is basically doing is just checking if the name contains data, and for each it's printing. So we don't have to do that. So the only this part is actually required. This acts as the function shorthand. You can do bunch of shorthands, you can concatenate shorthands, and it's going to be very useful. That's also something that I want to cover. Probably you'll not be immediately using this as part of this class or this session, and you'll not be seeing me using a lot of shorthands, because functions shorthands are useful when you're trying to write a big program, and not necessarily needed when you're trying to learn the basics. So that's pretty much it. That's all the steps, that's all the content I want to cover. I'll open for questions right now. So if you have any questions, you'll be able to answer. So they've had a bunch of questions. So I'm not sure if it's still up right now. Let me check. Okay. Let's quickly check. All right. Streaming's going fine. This is also going fine. And everything looks fine to me. So let me open for questions. Anything that you have, you can just ask me and I'll be able to answer. There's a question that I missed in the middle. So they've asked in the middle, like around 423 or around 815, 813. Does Amazon make e-commerce applications with Flutter? No, does e-commerce apps like in Flutter are used in Amazon or not? Inside Amazon, as far as I can tell, there is no application, or there is no production application that is using Flutter. There is a couple of reasons for that. One important reason is that you're trying to reach to not just 15 people, you're trying to reach to 10,000 people. You're trying to reach to basically 100 million, you're trying to reach 200 million. So that much number of people, that is what you're trying to reach. And there is often this trade that we try to do as a developer. You try to do a trade between the performance, or you try to do the trade between the customer's satisfaction. And Amazon takes the customer satisfaction as the most important metric. Whatever you take, whatever product you build, the customer satisfaction is very important. And when particularly you're building some applications that are going to be for that space, right, and it's that big of a audience, Amazon does not try to it has a bunch of checkpoints. It needs to see where it is working, where it is not working, and there's also hundreds and hundreds of tests that are running almost on an everyday basis before even a small change goes into production. So far there is no Flutter application. So far there is no cross-platform applications that are running in production as far as Amazon's application or app inventory is concerned. You have Prime Videos, you have Amazon Marketplace, and there's also Amazon Music, and there's also a bunch of things for Kindle, Alexa applications, and all of these are Android Play Store applications. All of these applications are running on a native Android program only for the Android App Store. Similarly, for iOS App Store, these are running specifically using the iOS application. So there is iOS programming. Basically, you can either have Swift or C#. So only these native code is only used. There is no Flutter as being used in any of the production applications as far as I know, since I don't have the entire visibility of the organization. So far as far as I know, these are the only things that are available as part of the Amazon's ecosystem. So if you want, if the Flutter, this is true for almost every company. Even if you see Google, right? Google made a huge change to support Google Pay using Flutter. And even though there was a lot of hiccups in initial stages, they did try to fix all these issues and they did try to release it, and it is a bit of a success for sure. So there's going to be a huge curve before a cross-platform toolkit like Flutter gets picked up by major organizations, but if it does, it does, right? So that's pretty much what is happening as far as Amazon is concerned. So yeah, let me do a quick recap of what we did so far and try to finish this stream. And we specifically learned into the most had a in-depth understanding of control flow statements. So control flow statements are pretty much the backbone of any programming language. You find if else, there is no programming language with an if else block. As 99% of the language with an if else block. And there is also the advanced control flow statements that we saw called as looping statements. Looping statements to just loop around or do the same task again and again. Two looping statements, for and while. These are two things that we saw. And followed by this, we also learned about the operators. Now, operators are very important because there's a ton of operators that Dart supports, but primarily we saw about arithmetic and post and prefix. Followed by that, we also learned about the conditional operators and also a new operator that Dart provides, which is called as the assignment operator. So these are the four different things that we looked into, and we learned about all of these things as part of this session. So I'll open for any questions. We have another 3 to 5 minutes. So if you guys have any questions, you can let me know right now, and I'll be able to answer them. Great. All right, so looks like everybody, so there's not a lot of questions coming in. Hopefully I did answer Dev's questions. Priyanshu was there as well. And in tomorrow's session, we learn a little bit more into classes and objects, and we're going to be having good understanding of that as well tomorrow's session. So I'll see you guys all there. I think that's the end of me for this session. Thanks again for joining, everybody. Hope you did learn something in this class. I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Do not forget to check out my YouTube channel, which is Coder Monk. And at the same time, you can also check out the the Unacademy platform, where I am actually taking pretty much weekend classes where we're learning about backend and doing the system analysis and things like that. We're going to be designing systems, right? We're going to be doing all of those arts in the Unacademy platform. You can use my the activation code, or I should say that invitation code, which is Coder Monk, to unblock all the free classes, not just to buy classes or buy. Great. So you can activate your free classes pretty much with my activation code if you guys find it useful, and I'll see you guys in the next session. So that's it from me. Thanks again for joining, everybody. Hope you all have a great day. Bye bye.